Unexpected guest. You know, through this Christmas season, we've been going through the story of, or the account, not a story, but the account of the birth of Jesus. How that Jesus first came and spoke to Zechariah and Elizabeth about the coming of their son, John the Baptist. How that then, a few months later, came to Mary and told her that she would bear the Son of God, that she would bear the Messiah. And then a few months later, came to Joseph. And then we find that Jesus is born, and God comes to the shepherds, and He has the shepherds come, and they find Jesus just as the angels had told them they would find Him. And everything is abuzz. Everything is so exciting. It's so exhilarating. I mean, the signs in the heavens, the songs of the heavenly choir, the shepherds coming and praising. Though they're in a stable, and Jesus is literally lying in a feeding trough, just wrapped in some rags. His family's poor. His family is not only poor, but it's made worse by the fact that the government has demanded that they go to Bethlehem for a census, and whether you have the funds to go or not. Maybe you've never been in a situation where you didn't have the funds. Have you ever been there where you would like to go see your family, you'd like to go somewhere, you'd like to do something, but you know what, there's not any money. And you can't go. But in this situation, you had to go. It was a requirement of the government. So they were not prepared for that. They went, and as they got there, there were no motel rooms. There were no room in the inn. They wound up in a stable, and their child laying in a feeding trough. But yet somehow God turns that into a glorious moment when the shepherds come. But what happened after that? Well, nothing. Nothing but life. Nothing but life happened after that. I mean, somehow I wonder what went through the head of Mary and Joseph, because all of these incredible things had taken place, and now everything just settles down to the mundane. Baby, and he's a normal little human baby, and they're dealing with the same stuff that we have to deal with little babies. They cry, they're hungry, and they do all kinds of unspeakable things, and you have to deal with that. And just life. And so things have kind of settled down to normal again, because they're living there in Bethlehem. Now, why did they settle in Bethlehem? Probably because they didn't have the money to go back home. And maybe there was a turn of events. Maybe there were some people who, having heard the word, said, well, look, I mean, since you have the Son of God, we'll let you stay at our place, or, kind of like the Ark of the Covenant in the Old Testament, like an Obed-Edom and all of that, and where he said, "Look, I'll take the ark," and God blessed him, and so I don't know if there were favors done or whatever, but for some reason they stayed in Bethlehem. Of course, we know the real reason was because God had ordained it. God had ordained it. You see, in our lives, sometimes we look back and we say, "I really don't know why I did this or why I did that." But what I've come to understand is, even in my stupidity, and even in my ignorance, and even in my dullness, God has a way of working His will in our lives if we're simply subject unto Him. Subject unto Him when we don't even know we're subject unto Him. You know how you're subject unto Him when we don't even know that we're subject unto Him? You just keep doing the right thing when you can, how you can, where you can, whenever you can. You just keep doing the right thing. Never knowing, in one of the statements, you just keep doing what you can. You keep doing what is possible, and then pretty soon you find yourself doing what is impossible because you just kept on at it. Well, here they are. It's been months now. We don't know. Jesus was dedicated. We talked about how that he was circumcised, and then on the 40th day he was taken to the temple to be consecrated to the Lord, and Simeon is there, and Simeon declares that this is the Son of God. This is on the 40th day. They offer 2 turtle doves. That was the poor person's sacrifice. And so from there, we don't know, but somewhere between that 40-day mark where Jesus is taken to the temple to be dedicated, that short journey down to Jerusalem, then back to Bethlehem, somewhere between 40 days and 2 years has now gone by. How do we know that? Well, let's go to Matthew chapter 2 and verse 1. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod, Magi, wise men, educated men from the east came to Jerusalem and asked. Now, who were these wise men, these Magi? They were affluent, influential, highly educated men who came from the east. East meaning Persia, the Parthian Empire. And as we look, they come here, which would now be what we would know in modern-day Iran. And as they come, when King Herod heard this, well, they came from the east to Jerusalem, in verse 2, and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east, and we have come to worship him." We've come not only to recognize him, but we have come to worship him. Now, that's important. And we'll tell you some intricate things that in our studies this week that we found that just really kind of struck a chord in my heart of God's incredible ability to work for decades, even hundreds, even thousands of years in advance, and in the moment among kingdoms and powers and authorities to move them to the place of his will. They come to worship Jesus. Now, when King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. I want to share with you why King Herod was disturbed. You say, well, because a king was born, and he was a king, and he might have thought that well, this king is going to try to take my throne. And that would probably not be totally out of line, because King Herod was a terrible, terrible man. He killed 3 of his own sons and his wife and multiple relatives to ensure that no one took his throne. 3 of his own sons and one of his wives and several of his relatives. He had them killed to make sure that no one had direct access to the throne to protect his life. So that could be part of it, but there was more to it than that, and we'll talk about it. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Christ was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written." And this is in Micah chapter 5 and verse 2. "But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will be the shepherd of my people Israel." And we talked about that, how that Bethlehem was the place where they raised the sheep for sacrifice in the temple in Jerusalem. The perfect lamb, the once and for all lamb, was born there in Bethlehem. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. Oh, and by the way, we don't know if there were 3. It doesn't give us any number. We don't really know how many. There may have been 3, there may have been 2, there may have been 10, there may have been 20. I don't know how many. It doesn't tell us. Now, for some reason, through history, it's 3. And for all of our pageants and all of our activities and all, it's 3. And, that's okay. You got to pick a number, so why not be 3? So we'll say it's 3, but we don't know if it was 3. It might have been more. It might have been less. I don't know, but it really doesn't matter. So why am I talking about it? I don't know. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and make a careful search for the child, and as soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him." Now, you've got to remember that King Herod was not a Jewish king. He was a king appointed by Rome to rule over this land, a hostile king, a brutal king, a cruel king, a not of the people of Israel king. And he's going to go and worship a Jew that is born when his kingdom, Rome, of which he is a part, that is, has sent him to rule over the Jews. So king of the Jews would be insignificant because king or Caesar over Rome is what really matters. And Herod, more particularly, my throne right here, my place of ruling. So his statement of saying, "so that I might come and worship him too," was disingenuous at best. Now, after they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star that had been seen in the east went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. I find this so intriguing. This star appears, and then when they go to Jerusalem, this star moves to guide them. Now, I was talking with someone the other night who was praying, and they were out and they were asking God to give them a sign, and they literally said, I was looking up to the heavens and I focused in on this one star, and they began to weep, as they said, and God literally moved that star right in my sight as a sign to me. Could God move a star? Yes, he says right here he did. Now, these were astronomers. These were educated people. They were students of the sciences. They were students of medicine. They were students of astrology and not astronomy, but astrology, and looking at the clouds and the stars and they saw the star, and then the star moved. That's pretty incredible to me. God then moves the star. And it stopped over the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, they were overjoyed. And on coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary and bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold and of incense and of myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. I want to stop here for a moment. I want to talk about some of these details. First of all, these wise men who came from the east. They were entreated of the king and asked, when did the star appear? This was not a momentary journey. This was not a sudden, impulsive journey. It was a very particular and very thought out journey. And we find that as he talked with them, Herod said, when exactly did the star appear? And we know that the star appeared about 2 years previous to this. Now, if the star appeared when Jesus was born, we also know later that Herod kills all the male children in Bethlehem area who are 2 years old and younger. So, Jesus could have been as old as 2 years old at this point. And when they come, these wise men, they come not to a manger. They come not to a stable. They come to a house. That they're there. And when they've come to the house, it says. Now, highly educated, from Persia, which would be southern Arabia, now called Iran, specialized in natural science, medicine, and astrology. They were part of the Parthian kingdom. Now, why was Herod so upset? Why was all Jerusalem upset about 3 guys who just show up? Because it wasn't just 3 guys. It was 3 very prominent Parthians with a whole entourage. These kind of men didn't travel alone. Not only were they most likely in a large entourage, it is highly likely they were also accompanied by a military escort. Well, now, why would this make bells go off with old Herod? Well, because you've got to be a student of history to understand that Rome and the Parthian Empire had been in great conflict one with the other. And only a few years earlier had the Parthian Empire been pushed back by Rome to the Euphrates River. And finally, there was an established peace created between Rome and the Parthian Empire because Mark Antony went down there to conquer the Parthian Empire, but and we know that he was not successful. He was beaten by the Parthians, but then we find that Rome managed to push them to the Euphrates River, and at this point there had just been established kind of an understood peace between Rome and the Parthian Empire. You stay over there on that side of the river, we'll stay on this side of the river, everybody's cool. Why? It had been very costly wars on both sides. So, when this Parthian entourage shows up in Jerusalem, and if you study the lay of the land, you know that this is the route where the armies would come to go into the Parthian Empire, or the Parthian Empire into the Roman Empire. It was on that path. So this is the crosshairs where the great conflicts between these 2 great powers would take place. So any Parthian military escort and this entourage showing up would cause red flags to go off everywhere. What's going on? What's happening? Because we're supposed to have a peace here. Why am I seeing a military escort? What's going on? Now, there's something else you have to take into consideration. Why would the wise men from the east and from Persia, why would they come? Well, do you remember that the Jews, Judah was taken into captivity? Where were they taken? To the Babylonian Empire, which Babylonia and Babylon, of course, in Iraq and Iran, that same empire, the Jews were taken captive and exiled into that land. And guess what? They became a part of that kingdom. And as a matter of fact, if you study about Daniel, if you study about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and you study about these guys, you find out that they were very prominent men, and they raised themselves up to much power and influence. And so what we have is we have descendants of David living in the Persian Empire, becoming prominent and important people there. So it should not be a surprise to you that they were aware and knowledgeable of the scriptures of the Jews, the Old Testament, and the prophecies about the coming of the Messiah. Why? Because they very, very likely may have themselves been descendants of the Israelites, of Judah, even of the King David. And these people are there, and so yes, the scriptures were there and they're available. And you got to remember that the Muslim belief, Islam, wasn't even a dream yet. Muhammad wasn't born till like 500 something AD. And so we're 500 years out before he's even born. So there is no Islam. This is the Persian kingdom. This is a totally different thing. And sometimes we get those things mixed up. And there was a certain tolerance that allowed other religions to practice. And so Judaism was being practiced in the Persian kingdom at this time. And so these men come back, but yet it causes great unrest because they certainly don't want any great conflict to begin again between the Parthians and the Romans. As a matter of fact, there are some historians who theorize that this visit of the Magi may very well have brought about the tension that arose about this time there in that region. And we find that finally there was a council of representatives from the Roman Empire and the Parthian Empire that kind of met at the Euphrates River and hammered out a peace that continued on, and that peace went all the way up until about 58 AD. Now this is all very important. From 36 BC, which is right before the time of Christ, to 58 AD, but in the middle of that there's this great tension that's created, and this one historian that I was reading said he contends that the very tension was created by the visit of the Magi that came to Jerusalem, because I'm sure word got back to Rome. Why are these people, why did they cross the river? They're not supposed to cross the river. They're not supposed to come over here. And then you study about the Armenian conflict and how they didn't want Rome choosing their kings and all that. But that's all history. But it's so intriguing because of this, people, because of this. God is moving the kingdoms of the world. God is moving even the very kingdoms of the world. If it were not for this peace, if it were not for this time, these Magi could not have come and visited Jesus. If this peace had not been brokered and created between the Parthian Empire and the Roman Empire. And where do you think the battles would have taken place if there was a war continuing on between the Romans and the Parthians? It would be in the Middle East. It would be right in the crosshairs of where Jerusalem is. Not only do we find that it gives a peace for a time where Jesus could come and be born, but also the church could be born, and the early church created, and the gospel of Jesus Christ spread throughout the world and through the Roman Empire. Why? God, it says, look at Hebrews. Hebrews tells us at the specific and particular right time, God sent His Son to this earth. So everything is working. Everything is so far beyond anything that some might contend, well, Jesus just looked at history and manipulated things and kind of made Himself appear to be the Messiah. There's just too many things that are happening. Whole kingdoms are moved when He is but a babe, even while His mother is pregnant with Him. So how in the world could He have manipulated all? And the more I study history, the more I understand the intricateness of all that is taking place and transpiring, the more I understand that, friends, we don't need to fear 2015. We don't need to fear the fourth blood moon in September of next year. I don't need to fear that. Why? Because I know who's in charge. You see, when Daniel was praying, and he's in this Persian kingdom, and he's out, and he's praying for God to restore the glory of Israel and Jerusalem, and he's over here and he's praying. Do you remember when he is thrown into the lion's den? I mean, he is praying 3 times a day. He's a righteous man. And finally, when he falls into the lion's den, the hungry lions that are there waiting became pillows upon which he could sleep. Why? Because there in that place was the angel of the Lord. And the angel of the Lord, I believe, could be the pre-incarnate Christ, said, hey, Daniel, from the first day you prayed, I was dispensed. But guess what? I've been battling the prince of Persia, but I had to take a break, come over here and spare you from these lions. I love Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they're thrown into the fiery furnace, a furnace that is burning so hot that the men who threw them in collapsed from the heat and died. And what do we hear? I saw 3 men cast in, bound and falling, but now I see 4 men up, loose and walking, and one looks as the Son of Man, the Son of God. You see, God has been involved in all of history and all these things that have taken place. And yes, I believe that God was in charge of all of this. Why? Because he needed these wise men to come and visit them at this moment, at this time. Why? Well, let's go on in verse 13. Well, actually, let's go down to verse 9. After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, in verse 10, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, not the manger, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold and of incense and of myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. And not only did they come uninvited, scaring everybody and wondering what's going on, but then they slipped away in the night. So I'm sure Herod, being the paranoid that he was already, is wondering, what did they really do? Did they come and look at the palace? Did they come in just to see our defenses, to see where, maybe they're planning an attack? I don't know. And you could see where all of this could escalate into a real issue that could create tension in that area. They slipped away. And when they had gone, and let me remind you, this was, I believe, probably a large entourage, and this was not some small chump change that was given. This was a lot of money. This was worth a lot. If you study these particular things that were given, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, very, very valuable. Gold has always been valuable. These other incense and stuff that were very, very valuable, they were given to Jesus. Why? In verse 13, when they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Said, "Get up," he said, "take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." Now, the angel appears to Joseph again, and he says, "You got to get out of here." They're again reminding you that these were poor people. These were not wealthy people. They didn't really have the funds to go to Bethlehem. You know they would not have had the funds to go to Egypt, and not only go to Egypt, to be able to reside there for a couple of years before they return. But instead, God sends supernatural resources to them, so that then they can depart and they can go and live in Egypt. You see, God has a way of bringing about His will and purposes in our life. So, verse 14, it's very important that we look at verse 14 in light of verse 13. I want to read verse 13 again. An angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up," he said, "take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." Now, what does Joseph do? So, he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt. He didn't even wait till morning. He woke him up in the middle of the night, said, "Get your stuff together. We got to go. We got to get out of here." "We just had guests. I mean, I just got through cleaning all the house and everything. We had all these guests and cooking all these meals, and baby Jesus' schedule is all out of whack, and now you're going to drag and get him up in the middle of the night. Get the baby up. Get everything together. We got to go. We got to go now. I mean, hey, folks, you need to make yourself, it was a real baby. It was a real mommy. It was a real daddy. It was a real circumstances. And yes, there were probably some of those conversations. What now? Did you have another dream? Yeah, get the baby. Come on, we got to go. So they go. When God speaks, it is our responsibility to what? Obey. So, when Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. What time? When the star appeared. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping in great mourning. And we'll go on down in verse 19. After Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel. For those who were trying to take the child's life, they're dead." You know, what did the angel tell Joseph he was going to do? He said, "You get up, you get down there until I tell you to come back." But you know what God doesn't forget? Now, we forget. Guys, you ever had your wife call you, "Can you pick up some milk on the way home?" And then you walk in the door, and your wife looks at you and goes, "Where's the milk?" I forgot. God doesn't forget. He comes back and he tells Joseph, "It's time now, go back." So he got up. What did Joseph do? When the angel came and said, "Get up and go back." Now, Joseph had been given quite a lot of wealth. I don't know how long he was there. We don't know particularly, but we know that I'm sure he spent a lot of that. But I don't know how much he had left. But we find that Jesus was not raised in a wealthy home, so it's not like he came back with a great pile of money. He was a carpenter. So he got up, took the child with his mother, and went to the land of Israel, just like the angel told him to. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning in Judea in the place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And having been warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee, and he went and lived in a town called Nazareth. And you know, Joseph did not know he was fulfilling Scripture when he went to Egypt. Joseph did not know he was fulfilling Scripture when he went to live in Nazareth. He did not know that. All he knew was God had spoken, an angel had appeared, he had had a dream, he had sensitive to God. And I don't know that much about Joseph, except I know this. Joseph evidently was a man who was listening for God's voice, and when he heard it, he responded. Mary, don't know a whole lot about Mary, except this. She was a servant who said, "May it be unto your servant ever how you want, God, your will be done." Even though she was troubled and afraid. So was fulfilled that was said through the prophet, "He will be called a Nazarene." He didn't know all of that. Now, Herod, this terrible man, was in power. But what are the wonderful lessons that we can learn from this morning? Now, I don't know what just happened. There we go. Let there be light. And there was light. What are some lessons we can learn from this? There's some lessons we can learn about God's providence in our lives. I don't know what 2015 holds for you. I don't know what 2015 holds for me. I couldn't possibly understand it even if God were to try to reveal it to me. But I will tell you this. Just as God was moving in the Roman Empire and the Parthian Empire, there in Jerusalem and all of Judea and all of Israel and all throughout history, God is still moving today. In our recent series, we have shown you how that God is fulfilling His Scripture in our day and time in the Middle East right now. God is doing exactly what He said He was going to do. In 1948, when He reestablished the nation of Israel. In 1967, with the 7-Day War, with the 6-Day War, and what happened there, and now what's happening today with the politics and what's going on in the Middle East and ISIS, ISIL, or whatever you want to call them at this point, and the endeavor or the effort of the Muslims to recreate the Ottoman Empire, and how all of that relates to Daniel and the prophecies and all of that and the revelation and everything that God is still at work today. And that all throughout history, speaking through the prophets and moving nations and times and things, he brought about the proper time for his son to be born. And now he is working for his son to return. And God is at work, and we need not be afraid. But what we do need to be is listening. We need to be listening for the voice of God to speak in the particulars of our life. Because the particulars of your life, those small little details, those small little things, whether I should take this job or not. Well, you take it if it's more pay and it's a bigger company or whatever, you just take it. No, you don't. Not if God doesn't God doesn't speak for you to take it. Or maybe God says don't. Why? I don't even have to understand. But if God troubles in my spirit, says you can't do this, you simply don't do it. Why? Because that's how God works in my life. He doesn't have to explain everything to me. He didn't have to come and say, now Joseph, first I need to explain to you. See, there were these prophecies and these things that have to take place, so you got to go there and then you'll come back and these. If he had told him all that, Joseph would have probably messed it up. God just knows we're dumb enough that he just needs to, look, I need you to get up and go to Egypt now. Okay. You get up and go to Egypt. I need you to go back now. Okay. But don't go back there. Go to Nazareth. Okay. Go to Nazareth. You say, can it be that simple? Yes. So many times in your life, we're looking for some huge, big, incredible thing. You've got to remember that over a 2-year period, there was that beautiful and wonderful and exciting and glorious night when the shepherds came. One night. Then there was that huge and exciting and beautiful day when the Magi came. 2 days. Out of 2 years. So some of us are thinking that every day is just going to be this huge, glorious spiritual experience. Let me tell you what a lot of days are going to be. A day. A day, followed by another day, followed by another day, followed by another day. And my next birthday, I'm going to be, is it 59? 50? How? I'm going to be 59 years old. I'm pressing 60. I'm going to be 59 going on 60. That don't even sound right. That can't be. Okay? But you know what I've discovered in these almost 59 years? It's just a lot of days, one right after the other. It's a bunch of them. And there's been some incredible, glorious, wonderful, exciting days that have happened, and then there's just been a lot of days. A lot of days where you get up and you put your pants and your shoes on and you go to work and you do the right thing. You go to the hospital, you visit people, you pray for folks, you counsel, you read books, you study, you prepare sermons, and you go on, and it's just one day going into another day. But in the end, you look back and God, some of those what seem very mundane days where you just simply followed something in your spirit where God said, go and do this, you had no idea. I look back on the back pew and I see Charlie Campbell back there. I got a call one day. Can you go see a relative of mine who's in jail and they need help? I didn't know when I went to see Charlie out there at the jail that God was going to transform his life and send him through a teen challenge type program. And now that Charlie would come back and he's on staff and he's one of our key leaders down in Mercy House, I didn't know that. I just did what you're supposed to do. Can you go talk to him and pray to him? Yeah. Matter of fact, I thought, I'll be honest, when I walked out, I thought, wow, I don't know what he's going to do. He's kind of, I wasn't impressed with Charlie, okay? I didn't think, wow, now there's a really sharp dude, man. I hope he's and he is, and he's a great guy, but then he was just, he was out there. And I thought, well, we'll see what happens with that one. God didn't give me a vision. You must go and see this man. His name is Charlie, and I will reveal to him what all he is. I just went and visited Charlie and told him how he could get some help. You know, when Dave walked up out here in the parking lot, and I had been his pastor when he was a little boy, and he walked up, I didn't know what God was going to do in Dave's life. I had no idea. But what do? You love, you care, you reach out, you help. You never know what one you might help and what's going to happen in the future. You just do it. And God impressed, help this boy, help him now, do it. Having no idea what God was going to do in the future. And there's so many things in my life, in your life, if you'll just look back, just do what God leads you to do as each day comes. God works to protect His people, and God works to move through His people, but you have to be obedient to those daily, mundane nudges of God's Holy Spirit in your life. Look, there's been some things in my life I didn't really understand, and there's still stuff I don't understand. There's been some moves that my wife and I have made, and we knew that it was God's will, but honestly, I didn't know. I just knew what God had told me to do, and I had no idea how He was going to work out all this stuff. And there's some things that I even looked at God and said, what have you done to me? I remember one day, I was mad. I was in my office, I was just upset, and I was crying. I said, God, what are you doing to me? Have I ticked you off? Have I made you mad? Or what are you doing to me? I mean, I've been doing what y'all ever had these conversations with God? I've been doing what you asked me to do, and you done got me in a mess. Now, and then God comes, it's okay, man. I know you just can't see. It's all right. You just trust me. And then He had the audacity to tell me, in 2 years, I'll help you understand what's going on. 2 years? You know how long 2 years is? I got to put up with this. I got to be in this for 2 years. I got to do all this for 2 years? Of course, I didn't have to do that because God moved and other things happened and all. But then in 2 years, God began to reveal His will and His purpose and His plan. Your life will be a mix. And this is where I want to sum it up as our musicians come. Your life will be a mix of high times and just days, and then struggles and difficulties. That's what your life's going to be. I don't try to tell young Christians that when they come to Christ, oh yeah, by the way, all of your problems are over. Everything's going to be smooth sailing from here. Everything's just going to be wonderful and peachy and warm and fuzzy and great. Not true. Not true. We don't know what tomorrow may hold. But I know He holds it. And I know He's in control of it. And as long as I'm subject unto His will, I just got to follow the signs. I just got to listen when He speaks. He told Abram, get up, get thee out to a land I'll show you. What land? It's that way. I would like to have been in on the conversation when he comes in to tell Sarah, we're leaving. Where are we going? That way. I mean, I don't know about Miss Sarah, but I know Miss Lynette. She'd like, I need a little more data other than that way. I mean, where are we going? How far is it? How much do we need to pack? What ought to be? She's had her yellow pad out. What all I need? Wait, I got to. She got her list, and I'm going, no, we just got to get up, get it all together. Let's go. We're going that way. He's going to give us a land. What land? I don't know. He said He'd show me when we get there. How's He going to give it to you? I don't know. He didn't tell me that. He just said He's going to give it to me. And he got up and he got out, having no idea. Can you imagine? Abram had no idea of today, right now, that we celebrate the birth of a Savior because Abram got up and got out and went to a land that God showed him. And truly, when he was an old man, he's 100 years old, and he's going, God, I ain't had a kid yet. I mean, when are we planning to start this program? And God goes, now. And He goes in and tells his 99-year-old wife, hey, it's time. What? You're fixing to have a baby. Get out of here. And then the rest is history. And I'm not going to tell you that there may not be some long times between. Joseph languished for 17 years in his captivity and all the injustices he suffered until in a moment, suddenly everything changed. He went from a common prisoner to second in command of all of Egypt. And through his command was able to save the nation of Israel from famine. You see, that's the God you and I serve. God is at work in ways we could never fathom or understand. And even in your life, trust Him and follow His voice. Even when it means going to Egypt or living in Nazareth. God, why do you have me here? There's somebody here needs to hear this today. God, why do you have me here? Why am I going through this? What's going on, God? I believe there may even be somebody here who might even have the same sentiments that I had that day when I said, God, have I made you mad? Have I offended you and upset you? But God knew that in His will and His plan, He was at work. And what I pray is that as we go into this new year, we'd learn a lesson from Joseph. And this is the lesson. Lead me, Lord, and I will follow.
I'm Lori. Thanks for joining us. Here at Southside, we'd like to help you grow in your relationship with God. For more info and ways to connect, go to our website. From there, you can like us on Facebook and even subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you need prayer, give us a call at the church office or feel free to email us. May God bless you, and we look forward to seeing you soon.